Why are you here, Mr. Clarkson?
Well, because I'm here to support farmers.
Right. Are you angry?
It's difficult to be angry on somebody else's behalf. That's like being... Yes, no, I'm not angry on someone else's behalf.
Right. So it's not about you. It's not about your farm and the fact that you bought a farm to avoid inheritance tax.
Classic BBC there. Classic.
Is it?
Oh, yeah.
What would you do if a courier in a tailored suit handed you an envelope from a Seattle law firm containing a £50 million offer for your home? For most, it's the end of the conversation. They'd take the money and run. But for Jeremy Clarkson, it was the start of a war. Diddley Squat isn't just a farm. It's a muddy, leaky, judgmental, sheep-filled patch of Oxfordshire that on its best day is worth a fraction of that offer. But as Clarkson realised, £50 million wasn't a valuation, it was a bribe. And the name behind it, Bill Gates. This is the story of what happens when the man who built the world's software decides he wants to own the world's soil and meets the one man in England who is too stubborn to say yes. While the world has been watching Clarkson learn to reverse a tractor, a silent revolution has been occurring across the British countryside. Farmland is being bought up, not by farmers, but by shell companies, investment vehicles, and strategic land acquisition firms with boring names and bottomless pockets. Clarkson describes a pattern of death by bureaucracy, where billionaires don't just buy a farm, they buy everything around it. They control the environment, the planning permissions, and the logistics until the original farmer is crushed under a mountain of paperwork. Bill Gates is now the largest private owner of farmland in the US, and this Seattle strategy has officially landed in the UK. The conflict isn't just about money, it's about a fundamental misunderstanding of what land is. In the billionaire's world, agriculture is an industrial process, something to be optimized, consolidated, and scaled using phrases like sustainable development. But as Clarkson argues, sustainable in billionaire speak often means bigger fields, fewer people, and more concrete. It's the transformation of the English countryside into a high-tech factory. By treating food production like a software update, the corporate elite are creating a future of dependence rather than sustainability. If a handful of people own the land, they own the food supply. And if they own the food supply, they own the power. The offers for Diddley Squat didn't stop at £50 million. They hit 70, then 100 million. It stopped being a financial choice and became a moral one. Clarkson's refusal wasn't about being noble, it was about the price of silence. By making the offers public, he broke the system's most powerful weapon, the private negotiation. Once farmers across the country started realizing they weren't alone, that the same shell companies were knocking on every door, the system got nervous. Parliament started asking questions. The monopoly was exposed. Clarkson isn't anti-innovation, he's anti-monopoly, standing in the mud at 6 a.m. to remind the world that some things simply aren't for sale. Jeremy Clarkson is still farming. He is still dealing with sheep that hate him and mud that never dries, but he is still independent. The offers have stopped, not because the billionaires ran out of money, but because they ran out of silence. The story of Diddley Squat is a sharp shot to the heart of the corporate elite. You can buy the land, you can buy the lawyers, and you can buy the consultants, but you cannot buy the soul of the British countryside as long as there are people stubborn enough to say no. Bill Gates may own the software, but for now the soil still belongs to the farmers, and that is a deal that no amount of money can change. Hundreds have been taken off London streets in a single blistering sweep. More than 900 arrests, executed in one coordinated operation, tearing through the West End with a force this city has not witnessed in years. And tonight, as police fans choke the narrow streets from Soho to Oxford Circus, one question hangs in the air. How long has this been festering beneath the lights of the capital's most famous district? It began before dawn. Moved fast, block by block, targeting mini-marts, vape shops, late-night takeaways, the very storefronts millions walk past every day without a second thought. Inside many of these units, investigators say, were the guts of a criminal economy: illicit tobacco stacked behind false walls, cash piles hidden under noose floorboards, ghost-managed companies masking illegal labour and funneling dirty money through the system. By mid-morning, London's West End was no longer the polished postcard version the world imagines. It was a crime scene, sprawling, chaotic, and deeply uncomfortable.
Sources inside the operation describe it as the largest high-street crime purge in modern UK history. Nearly 2,800 premises were visited and more than £10 million in criminal proceeds seized. That includes millions of illegal vapes, mountains of contraband tobacco, over £500,000 in cash, and significant quantities of cannabis. The arrests, now sitting at over 920 nationwide, tell only part of the story. What shocked investigators was the scale of the criminal infrastructure hiding behind these ordinary shopfronts. Months of intelligence work pointed to networks using ghost directors, fake leases, and illegal workers to keep operations fluid and almost invisible. For a district known for tourists, nightlife, and theatres, this was a jarring reminder that beneath the neon lights lies a parallel economy that has been quietly expanding. For months, officials warned that dodgy shops were becoming fronts for organised crime, raking in billions from illicit goods while exploiting migrant workers. In a political climate already rattled by immigration debates, this crackdown lands like a grenade. Inside government, pressure is mounting. The Home Office, under scrutiny for rising illegal working raids and asylum pressures, now faces another storm. How did these networks become so deeply rooted in Britain's most heavily policed district? Security officials insist this West End sweep is not the final act. They call it Phase 2 of a nationwide intensification, with every police force in England and Wales now drawn in. Trading standards, HMRC, and immigration enforcement are moving in lockstep, trying to reclaim high streets that in some areas residents say they barely recognise anymore. Politically, the fallout is immediate. Labour MPs are demanding new powers to close rogue shops permanently. Reform UK is seizing the moment to argue that the government is soft on borders. Business owners, especially those who operate legitimately, fear this will fuel a climate of suspicion that punishes the innocent alongside the guilty. And through all of this, communities are asking how long these networks have operated unchecked. If so much criminal infrastructure existed in the heart of the capital, what does that say about towns where oversight is thinner? Tonight, investigators are unravelling seized ledgers, forged IDs, cloned corporate document, and evidence of networks stretching far beyond London. Officials estimate organised crime generates £12 billion a year in Britain, money that disappears into offshore accounts and black market pipelines. This is more than a policing operation. It is a test of the high street's integrity, of Britain's border control, and of a political system struggling to reassert authority. If 900 arrests can happen in a single sweep, what else is still hiding in plain sight?
%80 of all theft arrests on Britain's rail network, 36.6% of sexual misconduct arrests, 35.7% of violent crime arrests, 39.6% of drug-related arrests, all committed by foreign nationals who make up less than 10% of the population. The moment these numbers hit the public domain, they ripped straight through Britain's political calm, igniting a national argument that can no longer be softened, ignored, or explained away. These figures landed like shockwaves because they were not anonymous statistics buried in a report. They were a mirror held up to a country wrestling with a question its leaders have tried for years to blur. Is illegal immigration making Britons less safe? And tonight, that question has exploded back into the spotlight with a force that feels impossible to contain.
We knew the migrant crime was off the chart. You only had to look at Europe, where they documented it for many years, to know that. You cannot expect them to act any differently when they arrive on these shores. We are importing monsters, and our government does nothing about it.
There was no slow drip, no cautious rollout. The numbers hit Britain in one single blast. And within hours, the mood across the country had shifted. Commuters on packed trains, parents walking their children to school, late-night workers returning home on dimly lit platforms, all began asking the same unsettling question. How did this imbalance become so extreme without anyone sounding the alarm? Social media lit up with disbelief, local forums filled with stories that suddenly felt connected. Across towns and cities, frustration hardened into something sharper, a sense that the system had been masking the scale of the problem, and that the public were only now seeing the truth. By the afternoon, Westminster felt the tremor. MPs reported inboxes overflowing with messages demanding to know how such disproportionate arrest rates were possible. Some pointed to failures in border control, others blamed years of timid policing, and a growing portion of the public concluded that the danger had been building quietly in the background, unnoticed or unspoken, until the new figures forced it into the open. What shocked people most was not just the scale of migrant-linked offences, but the feeling that no part of government seemed prepared for the backlash. For many Britons, the data crystallised what they had sensed for years, a widening gap between the lived reality of crime and the reassurances delivered by official voices. The figures didn't just spark a debate, they ignited a national reckoning. If British numbers were startling, a case emerging from the Netherlands felt like a warning from the future. Dutch students were placed to live alongside 125 new arrivals in an initiative designed, on paper, to accelerate integration. Students were encouraged to help newcomers adapt, share daily life, and build community. What followed was chaos. Reports surfaced of intimidation, harassment, stalking, violent confrontation, and multiple allegations of sexual misconduct. One incident involved a knife, another involved a group assault. An official investigation confirmed the pattern. This was no misunderstanding. It was a systemic collapse caused by naive optimism and total disregard for safeguarding. For many in Britain, the Dutch story struck a chilling chord. It shows what can happen when ideology outpaces common sense, and when governments gamble with the safety of young people under the banner of integration. These developments collide with one of the most unstable political climates Britain has faced in years. The Starmer government, elected on promises of restoration and competence, now finds itself cornered. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood has escalated deportations, tightened visa routes, and overseen the highest number of illegal working raids in UK history. But critics say these steps merely skimmed the surface. What intensified the pressure on the government even further was a wave of real-world cases that brought the issue into sharp public focus. One of the most high-profile incidents involved an Ethiopian asylum seeker who arrived in the UK by small boat and within days was convicted of sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl and a woman in Epping, crimes that ignited angry protests outside the migrant hotel where he was being housed. Under the UK Borders Act 2007, he should have been moved into immigration detention for removal, but an administrative error led to him being released from custody, sparking outrage and feeding the sense that the system is disjointed and reactive rather than robust. For many Britons, this case became emblematic of a broader breakdown in enforcement and stirred anxiety that failures in border control can translate into real-world danger far closer to home. Digital ID proposals, introduced as a solution to verify legal status and stop unlawful employment, ignited a firestorm within civil liberty groups and Starmer's own MPs. The plan was watered down, not strengthened, precisely when the country demanded clarity and firmness. Meanwhile, Reform UK has seized the narrative. Migrant crime has become their political battering ram. Every statistic, every arrest, every high-profile incident becomes proof of a system in collapse. Whether one agrees or not, the message is landing. Public frustration is rising. Trust in institutions is thinning.
Behind the political drama lies a deeper, more dangerous problem, a crisis in policing. As migrant crime statistics dominate headlines, trust in law enforcement is eroding. Videos circulate of officers appearing hesitant or overwhelmed. Whether the footage is representative no longer matters. The symbolism is corrosive. A police force perceived as uncertain is a police force losing authority. One commentator noted that years ago the sight of a police officer on the street commanded respect. Now some younger people mock them. In policing, mockery isn't harmless. It signals a power vacuum. Another voice defended the majority of officers who serve under immense pressure. But even that defense struggled against the uncomfortable truth. When public confidence collapses, no policing system can function as intended.
Step back, and this crisis fits into a broader pattern. Across Europe, governments are toughening asylum rules, accelerating removals, and reassessing decades of integration policy. The United States has adopted a harsher border stance. France and Italy have moved towards enforcement-first immigration models. Migration is now the central pressure point of Western politics. Britain is not unique, but its reckoning feels uniquely raw. There is a sense that the social contract itself is under strain. Communities that once felt stable now feel exposed. Public spaces that once felt predictable now feel volatile. The migrant crime debate has escaped the pages of reports and entered the emotional core of national identity. People are not arguing about numbers. They're arguing about safety, trust, and the fear that the state is no longer capable of protecting them.
The latest data did more than outline a trend. It revealed a wound, one Britain can no longer cover with cautious words or optimistic promises. And the question now hangs over Westminster, over every train carriage, every high street, every late-night journey home. How much longer will Britons tolerate a system they increasingly believe cannot protect them? The country is waiting for an answer, and patience is running out.